Alright, we've got a quick little video today updating you guys on the latest news from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Let's get right into it. So, the first thing we want to talk about is the battle system. The battle system has been mostly maintained from Sword and Shield. I didn't really see anything that was newsworthy from it. The return of battle rentals, I think, is a fantastic thing to see. Being able to share your teams with other people online without having to trade them the Pokemon or expect them to breed them themselves. That's really nice. That was missing from BDSP. And of course, BDSP was missing a lot of things, but it wasn't necessarily a 100% guaranteed thing to return. But it's good to see that it's back. I do like that. Besides that, nothing else to note here, really. The next thing is the new Pokemon that was revealed. It's Cyclizar. Cyclizar is a dragon and normal type, which I'm not personally a big fan of. It does give you an extra resistance, or an immunity rather, to Ghost, which is always good, but besides that, it doesn't really help too much because normal type moves don't synergize well with dragon moves. Both of them are types that generally want to hit things for neutral damage and do a lot of damage, right? And normal type moves don't really do that so much. Now, it is a lizard Pokemon, so it's going to have access to things like Glare, and then maybe it'll have access to other cool abilities besides Shed Skin. It does have Shed Skin currently, but I'm thinking maybe this could have something like Speed Boost, something that might be more useful overall, because while Shed Skin is a decent ability, if you get something like Speed Boost alongside it, well, which one are you going to run? Probably Speed Boost. But that remains to be seen. Now, one of the things I did note from the trailer is that this Pokemon, I believe, gets Shift Gear, and this makes sense because Cyclizar is supposed to be a motorbike Pokemon, and so it has, in theory, the ability to shift into a different gear, just like a bike would. And so having Shift Gear is actually a really potent move for this guy, right? It's a stronger Dragon Dance for it, and that'll be something to look out for, as it'll get +2 speed instead of just the +1, and a +1 attack stat, which isn't, as fantastic, but you can't have it too busted. And so that's cool. The other cool move that Cyclizar gets is it gets the ability to switch out when whenever it wants to, sort of like a U-turn or a Volt switch. But the difference here is that it gets to put up a substitute at the same time. So this gives the Pokemon coming in the substitute to be freely protected from the opponent's attack. Okay, this move is called Shed Tail, and I guess the idea is that Cyclizar is getting rid of its tail, and then the Pokemon gets so distracted by it, and that sort of makes the tail be the substitute, even though it's still shown as a substitute doll. And this sort of mirrors what some lizards do in real life, where a bird comes down to eat the lizard, and then the lizard's able to get rid of its tail, and the bird was holding it by the tail, and now, hey, all I've got left is a tail. And the bird will take the tail, but it wanted the whole lizard, and the lizard gets away with its life. So this acts like a U-turn, where the Pokemon, Cyclizar specifically, still has to take substitute damage, right? So you're still taking 25% of your HP, and then you're switching out, but a substitute is up. So this has some benefits and some drawbacks. The first benefit is that the Pokemon that's coming in doesn't have to take a hit, probably, unless there's a multi-hit move. But aside from that, right, if I'm switching in a ground weak Pokemon into something with Earthquake, and I'm worried that they might predict that, well, it doesn't matter because I'm going to get a substitute up. Now, if Cyclizar is a fast Pokemon like it appears to be, at least base 90 speed, something around that range, then something of that speed tier is going to be a fast U-turner or a fast Volt switcher. And those Pokemon aren't bad, and they have a place in the metagame, but if my opponent is slower than me and stays in, then they're going to get an attack off on whatever comes in. Now, if I have something like Blissey in the back, then that's not bad, right? And in fact, Cyclizar wouldn't want to use Shed Tail because it's going to be losing all of its HP to a Pokemon like that. But if I have a more offensive base team, and I need to get in a really slow attacker like Surfetched, right? Which is slow and doesn't want to be taking a lot of hits. Of course, I mean Surfetched is sort of bulky, but some of those slower attackers that we get 2 KO'd on switching is the problem. Well, if I can get a substitute up for it, then I can get it a free switch-in. And I think that's a really good one. Even a fast attacker would be able to outspeed in the following turn, but it's going to get O-code on the switch-in. I can Shed Tail to Blacephalon, and the Blacephalon can come in, and it's safe, at least for that turn. Even if it gets hit, the substitute will break, but now I'm in for 25% of Cyclizar's health. So you've got to take that into account, though, Cyclizar's health. And that's the big downside to this move, is that you're taking 25% of health each time, so this isn't something you can do over and over in a battle. I can U-turn and Volt Switch as many times as I want, barring Rocky Helmet and Rough Skin, and I can teleport with a Regenerator Slowbro until the cows come home. There's nothing stopping me from using the Teleport Blissey to great effect for the entirety of the battle over and over and over, right? Wish Clef is the same kind of thing with Teleport. And Cyclizar can't do that. So you only get this move a maximum of 4 times during the battle, and that's the optimistic outlook. Of course, if you're using this on hyper offense, that isn't an issue, because I only have to use like once, maybe twice, and then I get it in for free, behind maybe some screens even, and then I set up and go from there. And if that's how you want to use this Pokemon, I guess that's fine. But that seems really limiting, and is sort of a way to push Cyclizar into a very specific niche, which I don't think would be very fun to use personally. But besides that, you can't use that move that much. If Cyclizar gets U-turn as well, then maybe it would just prefer to use that over this move if its Pokemon teammates are bulky enough to not require the Shed Tail. The other reason this is a downside, personally in my opinion, is this reminds me a lot of Parting Shot. Parting Shot has the effect of lowering attack and special attack on the opponent, and that's a good thing for sure. But it doesn't do any damage to the opponent, and the nice thing about U-turn and Volt Switch is that I can use those to actually get off a decent chunk of damage on the opponent, depending on what they are, right? So I can get initiative while still getting a KO. Maybe I have a Magnezone and I've trapped the Corviknight, and the Corviknight's at 40% HP. Well, I don't want to be in with my Magnezone because the opposing Pokemon can take advantage of that and set up somehow, right? I don't know of a specific example, but let's say that I don't want to be in because my opponent has something that will Dragon Dance or will set up a Rock Polish on the Magnezone if I'm staying in. So I need to switch out, but I also need to get the kill on the Corviknight. That's what the Magnezone's job is to do. Well, it can Volt Switch out, and the Corviknight will be dead, and I'm into a Pokemon that will prevent the setup. But a move like this never can do that. It can never get the kill. It can never do damage, and that's the same problem you have with Parting Shot. I can never get KOs. I'm relying on Pokemon in the back to do that. So while I think this is a very useful move, I don't think by any stretch of the imagination this is busted, personally, and the only way it would be busted is if it were to be abusable on HO. Sort of like Baton Pass. Baton Pass by itself is not busted. It's only busted when you use it on Smash Pass teams or on other kinds of Baton Pass teams where you just accumulate all sorts of Baton Pass boosts and then you sweep from there, right? Unless you're doing something stupid like that, then it's probably not that busted of a move. And this move is worse because, as far as we know, you don't pass anything besides the substitute, and you're taking 25% of your health each time, so you can only do it a few times. And I don't think Cyclizar is going to get any recovery outside of Rest, and Rest Shed Skin could be a thing, then you're playing with RNG, and I don't really think that's going to be that reliable. Anyway, enough said about that. Let's get on to some of this other stuff. We got some new items. We got the item Mirror Herb, and Mirror Herb says if my opponent goes and gets an attack raise, or if they get a speed raise, then I get the same thing and I consume an item. So it's a one-time use thing. But if I'm in front of a Volcarona and they go for Quiver Dance, well, I get all of those boosts as well. And this could be very useful on Pokemon with Unburden specifically. I think Unburden is where you're going to see it the most use. For example, if I had a Volcarona on my team and my opponent has a Hawlucha, then I can never go for a Quiver Dance with my Hawlucha. It just won't happen. Because the moment I go for a Quiver Dance, they're going to switch in their Hawlucha hard on the Quiver Dance. and then I'm going to go and get a +1 to my Spadef and my speed, which the Hawlucha is going to copy and get its Unburden boost at the same time. Now it's going to be able to use Acrobatics and just Oko me. And then also have a +1 to their special defense and speed. So that would be one example, in my mind at least, where that would be sort of limiting. If that were a known thing to exist on the opponent's team, right? I could never go for, as the trailer shows, a Belly Drum, because then I'm going to give my opponent +6 for free. But I don't think most Pokemon will want to run this outside of the Unburdened Pokemon, because it's really unreliable, right? How many times does your opponent have something to raise their stats? There's so many teams out there that don't have a single stat raising move, in which case your item is completely wasted. So unless you have a specific thing in mind for it, or something is really prevalent in the metagame that you have to counter, then I don't see this item getting used that much, personally. The next thing I want to talk about is... got a bunch of stuff here. Got to make sure I cover it. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is the Covert Cloak. The Covert Cloak is a new item that was not shown in the trailer, but it was shown on the website. And the Covert Cloak says, if your move has a secondary effect, I don't get hit by the secondary effect. So this is essentially the ability Shield Dust. And as an example that they show, Fake Out will not flinch me now, because the flinching part is the secondary effect. The primary effect is the 40 base power normal type damage. Okay, so anything like Thunder Wave or Poison Powder, those moves will still work on you because the primary effect is the status. But if it has damage and then a secondary effect, those secondary effects will no longer happen. And this is really useful. As they show here, for instance, the Fake Out not flinching is fantastic for VGC Pokemon, right? Think about VGC, and you've got things like Safety Goggles, which all of a sudden have use in VGC, depending on how strong Amoonguss is in the tier at the moment. But the ability, without Dynamax, to just say, hey, Fake Out is now nerfed, means that I believe the Covert Cloak will be a strong VGC item. But I don't really play VGC, so if you have a counterpoint to that, let me know it. But I believe that in VGC, Covert Cloak will do quite well. In singles, however, I don't know, personally. In in singles, you get a lot more of hazards, and the Stealth Rock, Spike, Sticky Web is enough to make heavy-duty boots powerful. But generally, in singles, you either want leftovers or some kind of way to increase their attack power, like Life Orb or a choice item. And I don't really know how often you think, oh, I really wish I were protected from a Scald Burn. I don't know. I don't think this is going to protect you from knockoff either. I think knockoff will still knock you off, although maybe I'm wrong on that point. I don't remember if Shield Dust protects you from knockoff. But for the most part, I don't think that this will be a particularly useful item in singles. But it could be fun every once in a while to whip out, and it is going to be good to protect you from things like Scald. It won't protect you from static though, so it's not just going to protect you from all status, so you do have to think about that when you're team building. Okay, the final item that was shown off was Loaded Dice. Loaded Dice is for multi-strike moves, so like Icicle Spear, or Bullet Seed, or Tail Slap. And they actually showed both Cloyster and Breloom in the trailers. So we've got Pokemon that can use this, although Cloyster has its Go Link ability, so it doesn't need to use this. But Breloom, for instance, has Technician and Bullet Seed, and that could be really useful. However, I don't think this is a very good item at all, and here's why. So, as it currently stands, multi-hit moves have a certain percent chance to get 2 hits, to get 3 hits, to get 4 hits, or whatever, right? So let's look at it. Okay. So Icicle Spear, for example, right now, has a 35% chance to hit 2 times, 35% chance to hit 3 times, 15% chance to hit 4 times, and a 15% chance to hit 5 times. So that means that there is a 70% chance that a multi-hit move will hit 2 or 3 times, and that's it. Right? 70% chance to hit 2 or 3 times is not very good, frankly. So the only time you're ever going to see this move really is on Pokemon that have Skill Link and can ensure the 5 hits, right? A similar move is Scale Shot. So Scale Shot also has that same spread chance, 35, 35, 15, 15. So that's cool that it gives you that ability to hit more. Scale Shot, of course, is used by Pokemon without the Skill Link ability because it gives you a speed boost on Pokemon that don't have the option to get a speed boost otherwise, like Garchomp. So Scale Shot would be maybe an example where you would use it on a Scale Shot Garchomp specifically so that you could maybe hit more times. But let's look carefully at the verbiage here. You have the move is more likely to hit more times, but they don't say it's guaranteed. So I don't think this is going to have to be a one-use item. I think it's just going to be something that you have on this Pokemon. But it's not a Skill Link item. It's a worse Skill Link item. Where, what are you going to do? There are two options in my mind. First of all, you're going to say, let's invert the percentage chances. So now it's 15% for 2, 15% for 3, and then 35 for 4 and 5. Okay, that would be the first thing that would come to my mind when looking at loaded dice. If that's the case, then I still would have a 30% chance to get 2 or 3 hits, and 35 for 4 and 35 for 5. So I've only got a Focus Blast chance, a little bit better, of getting 5 hits. Right? If Focus Blast missed, then you get 5 hits. And so that's not great, but it's not the worst. And the other one I could think of would be to sort of say, okay, I'm going to get rid of the 2 times hit and say that the 35% chance, or maybe you make it so that it's you're guaranteed 3, and then it's 33% chance for each of them, 3, 4, 5, or something like that. Something that says you guaranteed at least 3, but it's still a good chance of getting a 3 hit and calling it a day. In which case, that's not really that much more powerful. If you think about it, compare the loaded dice to something like a Life Orb or a Choice Band. Well, those are going to boost the power of the move itself, so I don't need to get more hits. I'm still getting the same amount of power out, and still playing around with the chance of getting 5 hits, plus the power. So overall, something like the Life Orb or the Choice Band might still be more useful overall. So I personally think that the loaded dice are not a good item and will not see very much play. But that's just me based off of how they are currently describing it. Finally, let's talk about terastallizing. So they did show off a couple of terastallizing points, and some of this was known and some of it was not known. So for instance, they started off showing Colossal, and Colossal's Terra type was the Water Terra type. Now, the Pokemon comes out, you don't know that it's a Water Terra type. All you know is that it's coming out, and you are a Rotom Wash, you want to use Hydro Pump on the Rock and Fire type. And then the Pokemon trainer just whips out their Terra Ball, or whatever the heck it's called, I forget, and says, hey, my Colossal is now going to be a Water type, and now your Hydro Pump is not going to do any damage. So that's one of the main reasons why, in my opinion, terastallizing is going to have to get banned, because it's way too unpredictable. You had no way of knowing what the Terra type of this Pokemon was going into the battle, and you didn't know that the trainer was going to terastallize this turn. Now this Colossal has the ability Steam Engine, which means it immediately gets up to +6 speed when hit by a Water-type move. And because now it resists that Water-type move, it got up to +6 speed with very little investment, other than the fact that it used up the terastallization for that particular trainer. But I will say the one interesting thing about this specific example is that even though the Colossal now resists the Rotom's Water move and now is weak to the Rotom's Electric move, depending on the Rotom's investment, it may still outspeed, maybe not. And what is it going to do back to the Rotom? It's not going to do anything to the Rotom, because the Colossal maybe has, like, what? Does it get Solar Beam? That would be the only thing it could possibly do to the Rotom. Otherwise, it's going to have fire, rock, and a water move, and that's it. So that was a really dumb play by that trainer, in my opinion. But it's the example they went with. Now, one thing to note that I do think is sort of fun is UI change. The Colossal Steam Engine off to the side now actually shows an icon of the Pokemon. And I like that because not only does it give it a bit more polish, but also in VGC specifically, there's often, well, I guess not just VGC, but anytime you're playing with international players, if my international players have characters which are not of the Roman type, then how am I supposed to read the name of the Pokemon, right? A lot of times it'll just be confusing as to which Pokemon's ability is going off if you don't know what's going on. So having the picture next to the name of the ability can help to clue you in as to what's going on. Overall, it's not a big change, but it's sort of nice. Anyway, then finally we need to talk about the move the Tyranitar went off with. It's called Terra Blast, and they showed Gallade attacking a Tyranitar. Tyranitar Terra types into the Ghost Terra type, and the Ghost Terra type is shown for the first time. It looks sort of silly in my opinion, but I guess all these hats look silly. And so close combat does nothing. But then the Tyranitar actually gets to go for Terra Blast, and this would hit the Gallade super effectively, because what Terra Blast says is that it's going to change type to whatever your Terra type is, but only once you've terastallized. So if the Tyranitar used Terra Blast before it had terastallized, then it would have been a normal type move. But if they use it after the terastallized, now it's a Ghost type move, and since Gallade is a Psychic type, that is a super effective move, and it will completely annihilate the Gallade. So if we look at this clip from the website, we can see that the Terra Blast is a normal type move, and it's a TM move. So presumably you can give it to all Pokemon. So that means that any Pokemon now can have any Terra type, depending on how much you grind for it, right? Or if you use an item to change its type, sort of like a curry or something, right? Or a mint. So you can get any type you want, any Pokemon, and even if they don't have a move that matches that type, they still have Terra Blast, which means that basically they get a free hidden power. Everybody gets hidden power. Now they did limit it, and I do like this limitation. The limitation is that Terra Blast only matches your type, or your Terra type specifically, once you've terastallized. So only one Pokemon on any given team is going to get access to a hidden power in this way. Right? Terra Blast is only going to be a cool third typing for this Pokemon once they've terastallized. So any Pokemon that terastallizes into a type that they already have isn't going to get any benefit from using Terra Blast, really. Probably. Maybe there's some hidden benefit I'm not aware of, but probably not, because they already have, like, so for instance, this Flareon already has fire type moves. So it doesn't need Terra Blast, because unless Terra Blast is like 180 base power move or something, then it's not really going to be stronger than Fire Blast or Flare Blitz or whatever it wanted to use normally. But perhaps maybe if it's the same type, then Terra Blast gets an extra boost, but probably not. But if you are a Pokemon that has a Terra type that doesn't match your primary type, then of course you would want to run Terra Blast, probably, because it's going to be like maybe 100 base power move flat with no secondary effect, is what my guess is personally. And so that'll be really good to have access to that. So if you have any fantasies about, I want my Flygon to be a bug type, well, now your Flygon can be a bug type, and it can have access to bug type moves besides U-Turn and First Impression, and that would be the Terra Blast, right? Or if you really wanted to have a Rotom Wash, but you still wanted it to be a Ghost type, well, now you can. It can have Shadow Ball, I suppose, but you could also run Terra Blast as well. If you wanted to have I'm trying to think of something else. Oh yeah, well, okay. So here's a good example of a Pokemon. So what about Gyarados? Gyarados is a water flying type. It doesn't get any good flying type moves. But if you terastallize it into a flying type, now it gets Terra Blast in the flying type and can spam that flying move as a flying type. Now, I guess I say I spam it, but I will note this. It does say here that you have to use it at the right moment to change the flow of battle. I don't know what that means. Does that mean use the Terra Blast move at the right moment to change the flow of battle? Which would imply to me that it only gets to be used one time. If that's the case, then this is more like a Zame move, in which case you can't spam it and that'll change it entirely. However, if they're just saying Terrastalize at the right time so you can use your new move or your new type for Terra Blast, then that would be something else entirely, right? So we'll still have to wait on that point. If it's a one-time thing, then that really changes a lot. But that remains to be seen. The other thing to note is that Terra Blast is going to be using your attack or special attack stat, whichever one is higher. So this is quite useful because that means that you can have one move for all Pokemon, and it doesn't matter what they are, they can just have it, and it'll always just respond to whichever stat is higher, which is quite nice, I think. But yeah, that's sort of the end of what we've got today. I think it's nice to get some of this stuff finally into the open so we can all talk about it and be on the same page when it comes to that. So now we know why the Gardevoir, for instance, was able to be a water Terra type. Because why would I ever want a water Gardevoir? Well, if I want my Gardevoir to be a water type, I totally can, because it will have Terra Blast and it will have a water type move to use once it Terrastalizes. Would that still be a very useful thing? Maybe not, but I mean, it is normally a fairy type, so it gets Moonblast, so water and fairy, pretty decent in terms of coverage. Wouldn't be the worst idea, but maybe there are stronger options out there. Who knows? But yeah, that's it that they showed off today. They didn't show off the final evolutions, unfortunately. I would have liked to have seen that. But aside from that, this is about as much as we could have expected. And yeah, that's all I got. So I'll see you guys next time.